Yeah, so at the time of the accident, I had about 7 or 8 years of experience woodworking as a hobby that actually took up a lot of time, something I was dedicated to. Initially, my first interest in woodworking came from my grandfather, who had been doing assorted, assorted types of woodworking most of his life, and I think I was probably 5 or 6 when he first showed me just very basic things. I actually found at my grandma's house recently a little car that he and I built. But as he taught me more as I got older, he gave me my first set of tools, just some really basic hand tools. But even when he taught me how to use a handsaw, before he let me use anything, he would always go out of his way to explain, okay, you have to make sure you're avoiding this, and you're doing this particular thing. The saw I was using was actually a hand-me-down from my grandpa that he had given me. So I was making crosscuts. I was cutting lengths of maple to size for cutting board, and had a sled on the table saw. And I was just making repetitive, exact same cuts, and I had a lot of them to do. I got in a rhythm, and right towards the end, I went to grab one of the offcuts and didn't turn the saw off when I did that. I knew better, but I was in a rush. I'd done it, 1,000 times before. Wasn't thinking, and when I grabbed the offcut, I bumped it just enough that the blade caught it, pulled the wood back, and took my hand with it. When I grabbed the wood, there was no moment where I realized it had hit the blade, or no moment where I realized my hand had started to move. It was just there and it was done. It was stunningly fast. Index, middle, and ring finger were all partially amputated. They were all attached by just a piece of skin. They reattached all three. Luckily, the shop's here in the basement. My wife was home and upstairs at the time, so I just kind of yelled for her and ran upstairs, wrapped it in a towel, and went to the emergency room then. My grandpa was one of the first people I spoke to after the accident. One of the first things he asked me was whether it was a saw he had given me, and I did not tell him that it was. I never wanted to let him know that it was his saw that did it. And it's something that I can't forget that this happened. It's something that I'm constantly learning and dealing with, and even though it is relatively minor as far as table saw injuries can be, it's still, almost everything I do is affected by it somehow. If you had asked me before this happened to list all the ways my life would be impacted if I had a serious hand injury, I could have talked for hours and I still wouldn't have hit a fraction of it. Turning a doorknob, starting your car. I couldn't start my car for weeks without having to reach my other hand over, and I didn't have a push button car at the time, so turning the key was a real challenge because I couldn't get that grip. I couldn't turn it. During the time when I was out of work, even though I was on short-term disability, I had the coverage there, but it was on a reduced income, and I wasn't able to supplement my income with the woodworking like I was doing for a while, so I ended up just accumulating a lot of debt to pay bills, to buy groceries. It's still something that stresses me. It's still something that I see, that amount of debt that I can trace directly back to the time I was out of income because of this. And I'm still paying down those credit cards and some of the loans from that time. And every time I start really thinking about it, I can point back to this incident and to this time for the cause of most of it. Taking care of an infant isn't easy no matter who you are or what's going on. We got as many things with zippers and Velcro as we could, because trying to hit 20 buttons on a onesie with a 2-month-old squirming around that's a challenge with 2 good hands. And I just was unable to do buttons for the longest time, because even just regular snaps were so hard, because trying to keep him still and just get the buttons together was tough. My son he's about to turn 3 in a few weeks, and the way toddlers do, he's immediately drawn to anything that I do, and especially with power tools, they're loud, they make noises, they make a mess, they're cool, and he's immediately drawn to them. And we've gotten him toy tool sets, and when I think about teaching my son to do woodworking and use power tools, it's as much value as I find in it. There's always that fear that if he does pursue it as a hobby or a career, that something could happen. And as a parent, my first instinct, my number one priority is keep him safe, keep him happy. And as much as I know the value in learning a hobby or a trade like woodworking or anything like that, the inherent risk of doing so is always front of mind for me, because it has to be. Yeah, I mean, the one lesson I really take from it is just how quickly it happened. No matter how confident or how experienced you are, it's just a split second. And I feel like when you're using a tool with that potential and that power, everyone's bound to have an accident, and it's just a matter of when and how bad is it going to be.